Hello, I am Curry with Gorilla Games, and this is the setup and how to play video for Brutal Beatdown face-off mode. Now, we could use the quick fight sheet here that has the status effects down the side, but for this tutorial, let's actually show you how to set up the game. So we'll get all of our components, and Brutal Beatdown has multiple modes of play, so there are more components included than are actually needed for each mode. So to begin, let's get our status effect card. On this side, we have the status effects where we would track the player status and the opponent status. On the other side, we simply have an abilities reference card so we can flip it over and reference what certain abilities do if we forget. So place the status effect card there. Then we have our actual reference card. On the other side, we have a reference card for a different mode of play that's called onslaught mode. We are playing face-off mode, so we're going to place that there. Above it, the turn structure card. Again, this is double-sided. We want the horizontal-sided one, not the vertical. That is for a different mode. So we'll place the turn structure card there horizontally. Then we will place the player tracker card, the hit box card, the opponent tracker card, and we will take our deck of items, place it right up top, and then we will place our fighter cards. And the remaining cards that we have for tag team mode and endurance mode, we'll put those back because we don't need them currently. And so now we have the general layout of the cards, but we're not quite done yet because we need to start putting the components on. So we'll take 3 tracker cubes and place them at the beginning markers on the opponent tracker card. And then we will take 3 more tracker cubes and put them right over here to track certain objects on this card, as well as to track status effects. And then, most importantly, we will begin to get our fighter set up. So there's numbers on the skill side and the energy side, and we'll place a slider on the topmost number on both sides. Place that down, and then we will take a red die with matching value and put it over the heart icon. Now let's do that for the opponent card. All right. And that's a 4. All right, so just about finished. We will now look at their XP. So the player fighter has 3 XP. If we reference this, between 1 and 3 XP gets 4 action dice. So that fighter is going to get to use 4 action dice. And the opponent fighter has 3 XP. So on this chart here, 1 to 3 XP for the opponent gets 2 action dice. And then we'll grab the yellow die. We'll always use the yellow die, but these, the player and the opponent dice, will change depending on the fighter's experience points. And that is the setup for Brutal Beatdown face-off mode. Okay, so let's learn how to play Brutal Beatdown. The first thing we will do is, well, we're going to reference the turn structure card, and it's telling us to roll all of our action dice. And so we're going to take the yellow die, the player dice, the opponent dice, and the attacker die, and we're going to roll them all at the same time. We'll take the 5. So re-roll the attacker yellow die if applicable. That is this die. This die is telling us which of the fighters is going to be the attacker. So rolling a 1 to 3 on this die, we would put it here. Rolling a 4 to 6, we would put it over here. In this case, we rolled a 5. Now, the cool thing about this is if we rolled a 3 or a 4, the faster fighter would get to re-roll this die to potentially get the upper hand and attack first. But in this case, the attacker will be the opponent fighter. The next thing to do is to take the 2 black dice and place them next to the corresponding number on the opponent tracker card. And this sets up the fight puzzle. We know that the opponent is going to attack first, that on their turn, they are going to first do this 2 die. When resolving the opponent tracker card, you always resolve from the bottom to the top. And when it's activating, you go in the direction of the arrow. So when this 2 die activates, he's going to do a high attack and then a low attack. So this is a high punch, low punch. And the way that you read these icons here are you have fight moves. So you have the kick icon, the punch icon, the power icon. And then you have the spikes. If the spike is on the bottom, that means they're doing a low attack. If it's on the top, that means they're doing a high attack. And if it's on the top and the bottom, that means it's a major attack. Those ones are harder to defend against. And some fighters are stronger at kicking. Other fighters are stronger at punching. It really comes down to which fighter you're against. So pay attention to your fighter's attributes to see what they excel at and what their weaknesses may be. Now, a low attack causes 1 damage, a high attack causes 2 damage, and a major attack causes 3 damage. So keep that in mind as well. So with that said, he's going to do a high punch, which would cause 2 damage, and a low punch, which would cause 1 damage. And then after that, oops, we forgot to put our tracker cubes there. After that, the 6 is going to advance that orange cube onto the ability icon. We're not too concerned with that icon because this particular fighter doesn't have an ability, so it's not going to do us any problem, but we know it's going to attack. And so with that fight puzzle understood, we will then take our white player dice and we will alter them and then allocate them where we see fit. Now, we're in luck because we have 2 defensive fight moves. 1, 2, and 3 are defensive fight moves. A 1 will block, a 2 will jump, and a 3 will duck. And you need those to counter the attacking fight moves, which are kick, punch, and power. And so a block would, let's see, we can jump to avoid the low attack, and then we can block to avoid that high attack. So we now know we're not going to take any damage from the opponent fighter during the next phase, but we have a 5 and a 6. So we can do a range of things. We can plus or minus a value from one of the dice for the cost of 1 skill point, or we can re-roll one of these for the cost of 1 skill point. We can do that as many times as we decide or choose to, so long as we have the skill points to spend. Or we can spend 2 dice that equal 7 or more to increase our skill points, which we don't need to do because it's already maxed out. We can spend 2 dice to achieve 8 or more to receive +2 energy. Again, we don't need to do that because it's already maxed out. Or we can spend 2 dice to draw an item card. Now that might be handy. Down here on the bottom, we can spend energy to either toss, and that would be moving one of these tracker cubes back, or dash, which would mean we would increase our speed on the next turn, so we could potentially become the attacker much easier. We could use an item. We don't have an item equipped, so we don't need to do that yet. We could wait, which means that we could spend 1 energy to save this die value until next turn, or we could contest the opponent's item. And the opponent isn't using an item, so that means my best decision right now would be to draw an item. I think that's what I'll do. I'll spend 2 dice that equal 11 to draw an item card. When I flip this item over, I have 2 items to choose out of. I can choose the top card, which is a sword, or I can choose the bottom, which is a shield. And in this case, it really comes down to what your attack strategy is. The sword, I am going to use the sword. So I will slide the sword underneath my fighter so that the unused item is hidden underneath it. And with that, the planning phase ends and we will begin the action phase. So we're going to resolve the attacker turn. We see that the attacker is the opponent, so he will resolve this 2 first because we're doing the bottom to the top. We blocked his first attack, we blocked his second attack, and then we will go to the next die up here, the 6, and we will advance this cube. In this case, the cube advanced onto an ability icon, which, as I said earlier, that fighter doesn't have an ability, so it doesn't do anything. However, it could advance onto the plus energy and increase its energy. It's maxed out. The middle icon shows an icon that doesn't apply to this mode. That icon is specifically for tag team mode, so we can ignore that one. And then we have the skill icon. His skill's maxed out, so we wouldn't be too worried about that either. However, the end of the track we are worried about. So if it reached this one, the opponent would spend 1 energy to equip the bottom item. The next one up is 1 energy to equip the top item. Once the cards are equipped, they will use them the next time it reaches there. So the first time they're equipping them, the second time they're using them. This top one, the 6th row, is the most dangerous because it will activate a combo, which is 4 attack fight moves, and that could potentially cause a major problem. So with all of that explained, the action phase, we've resolved the attacker, we've resolved the defender. Now we're going to reset cubes if applicable. We don't have any cubes to reset. The cubes would have been the ones that reached the end of the track. We would have just moved them to the beginning. Or it could be a status effect. So some of the fighters and items and enemies can cause status effects. And so we would place a cube next to that status effect to track it. And then at the end of the next phase, we would then set it back aside because the statuses only stay in effect for 1 turn, no matter the status. So then the next thing on the action phase is to gather the active action dice. So we'll gather the dice back up and we will roll again. So we got a 3, which goes here. We got a 5, a 5. So this is good timing, so because I can explain 2 things here. So it got a 3, and if you recall, the faster attacker can choose to re-roll. Well, in this case, both of our fighters are 3, so the tie, nobody would roll. So it's going to stay here. On this side, we rolled doubles. Down here, you see a bracket. Had we have rolled doubles on a 1, 2, or 3, the opponent would spend 1 skill point to re-roll one of those dice. If the opponent didn't have the skill point to spend, they would forfeit that die. However, they rolled 2 5s, which means this tracker cube is going to advance and activate any icon it passes, in which case that icon doesn't matter for face-off mode, so we're in luck, but it's going to instantly go to there, and the opponent will draw an item card during their turn. So now we know what the fight puzzle is. We will grab our player dice and we will alter and allocate them. Since I know the opponent's not going to attack me, I don't need to spend my dice to defend myself. So I'm going to spend them to instead attack the opponent. Up here on the hitbox card, I can spend dice to activate a fight move. So if my fighter had an ability, I would want to do this 1 and 6 here to activate my fighter's ability, but he doesn't. But all of the rest of the moves do apply to him. So I can spend a 3 and a 4 to perform a low kick, which would cause 1 point of damage if successful. I could spend a 3 and a 5 to do a low punch. And again, remember, low punches, low kicks by default do the same amount of damage. But as you play Brutal Beatdown and as you begin to mix fighters, some fighters will excel at punch attacks while others can't perform kick attacks. So for example, let's say somewhere down the line I introduce a blob that doesn't have legs. I probably wouldn't give him a kick attack, and so that move wouldn't be available to the blob. But I want to try to do the most damage. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to spend 1 skill point to change this 3 to plus or minus this 3 to a 2. And I'm going to put a 2 there, and then I'm going to take my 4 and I'm going to put it there. Now I'm going to do a high kick to try to cause 2 damage. I could do a 3 and a 5 to do a low damage or a low punch, but for the sake of the tutorial, let's go ahead and use my item. So up here, to use the item, on this side, it says use 2 or 3. I have a 3 die. So to use that item, I need to spend a 3. And I'm going to place it right there. Now I have a 5 die left over. There's not really much I could do with it. I could just forfeit it. I could spend another skill point to re-roll and hopefully get a better die that I may want to save for next turn. So let's say I was worried that they were going to activate a combo. I could try to use this turn to get a defensive fight move to then hold until next turn, but for now, I'm just going to let it. No. Yes, I'm just going to let it forfeit. Remember, over here, that tracker cube was going to reach the top item. He's going to activate the item. He's not going to use the item. If he was going to use the item, I would probably want to use that contest. So now I know what the turn's going to look like. The planning phase ends, the action phase begins. So when resolving the player fighter's turn, you can resolve it in any order that you decide to or want to. Sometimes you got to be careful because the opponent, if the opponent went first, they could potentially make you lose energy, and then on your turn you won't have the energy to spend to actually do your turn, so you'll have to be careful with that. In this case, we're perfectly okay. I placed a die here. I am now going to spend the energy to use my item. So when using items, you will roll 1 die. I rolled a 3. Up here it says roll 3 to 6. The user causes 1 damage. So I will cause 1 damage to the opponent. However, for each undefended attack attempt, it says it right here on this card here, the fighter being attacked can spend 1 skill point to contest fight moves, or 1 energy point to contest items. So I'm using an item on the opponent. He is going to spend 1 energy point to try to contest this 3 here. So let's roll a die. Rolled a 3. So on the item to contest, the opponent needed to roll a 3 or higher. And so he successfully defended against that attack. All right, so in this case, I am now going to do my high kick. So the opponent will spend 1 skill point to contest my high kick. Now, the amount of contest dice that the opponent is going to roll depends on the opponent's XP. So the XP of this opponent fighter is 3. Right down here it says 1 to 3 XP, roll 2 action dice, which we've been doing, or 1 contest die. So we're rolling contest die. He's going to roll a 1, and he's going to need to either roll a 1 to block that, or a 3 to duck the high attack. He rolled a 2, so he jumped when I did a high kick, so I kicked him right out of the air, and my kick attack does 2 damage. So 4 minus 2 is 2, and now if he didn't have the skill points or the energy points to actually contest like that, he just wouldn't be able to contest, and I would be in luck there. So sometimes it's strategically beneficial to whittle away at their skill and their energy so that you can just attack, but you got to be careful too, because they may have something up their sleeve as well. So we've done our turn. We're going to do the player turn, and he's going to advance that. He's going to spend 1 energy, and then he's going to draw an energy card and attach the top one. So he's getting a pretty cool card there. We'll put that right there. But that is how face-off mode works for Brutal Beatdown. I hope you enjoyed. Would love to hear you how your fights are going, and just get any updates that you have. Enjoy the game. I am Curry with Guerrilla Games. Happy gaming.